Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to start in a few minutes, but what I wanted to do before we get started was first go through some technical training as we are all learning this. You will see in the box on your right-hand side, it says GoToWebinar Control Panel. And then you'll see a section under that called Questions and Chat. What I'd like you to do is, if you are having any issues with your video or webinar or audio, to please post your questions in the questions section so that we can provide some assistance to help. Great. Thank you all for joining us. If you have any other questions, what I would strongly recommend is that you use that question or chat section, and we will try to get to everybody's question as they come up. This is the first in a series of webinars that NMAC will be doing. We'll be doing these webinars every week on Thursdays at 10 and 2. So that we can keep the field informed of a variety of issues that will be happening. But before we go through and do this, I wanted to say a couple of things. Number one is, and this is really important, we are not experts. We are not an expert on the PPP program. And today we're going to be talking about the PPP program, but it's important for you to work with your bank to figure out the issues that your bank has as you look at the specific concerns that may be coming up. So number two is that even though we're not experts, you may be wondering, so why are they holding this webinar if they're not experts on the topic? So let me tell you what we are experts on. We are experts on community. We understand why community is or is not getting the support that it needs. And unfortunately, this is a program that is going to be run through banks. And as you may know, historically, there has been some banks who have had discriminatory lending practices, and that we are very concerned about whether or not this program will work for our constituents. And so we'll be talking with all of you to make sure that as people of color, as people in the LGBTQ community, particularly the trans community, as people, as women, as people who use drugs, for all of those different segments of society that get stigmatized, we want to make sure that this program works for you. And so part of what our interest is to spend some time monitoring it, working with you on your responses, and helping you to make sure that you get treated fairly by the banks that when you apply for this program. You should have just received in the mail a copy of the actual application that is going up tomorrow. If you did not get a copy of that application, please put in the question that you did not get a copy, and we can email it to you right now, because it is important to have a copy of the PPP questionnaire, because that is the thing that the banks will be putting up tomorrow, we believe. Third thing that's important for us to talk about is that this was the third of what we believe are going to be more stimulus packages. Joe will be talking in a minute about the future of what future stimulus packages are going to look like. And so we're also going to want some input from all of you about these stimulus packages and whether or not what we can do to make sure to help ease the transition for the HIV field. Let me start by saying, let me say that NMAC's real concerned. We're real concerned about the field. We're real concerned about the survival of our organizations. And so this week we're going to be talking about the PPP program, but next week we're going to be talking about other programs and other resources that will be made available to community to help them through this very difficult time. So before we get started with the actual presentation, there are right now 79 people on the the GoToWebinar. We tried to limit it to 100 people because we felt like webinars with too many people would be impossible. So you were the lucky 100 who got on. Next week, it's probably going to be a little bit larger. But for those of you who are on this week, can you write in the question section, where are you from? We'd like to know kind of who's online right now. And the voice of God, Chip, will tell us the answers or the questions that he gets. So Chip, who's online right now?
Well, right, first up we have is Rock Schuler from AIDS United.
Great.
We have Amy Young from Open Help from Winter Park, Florida. We have Jeff Feller, who's from Gainesville, Florida. We have Ellen Hudson from Tallahassee. Lisa Mercado from Pride Lines in Miami. Donna Powell from FAHASS at Fredericksburg, Virginia. Randall Mason from Daytona Beach. Carla Pompey from the Nations Foundation. Michael Rosen from Primary Care Development Corporation. Sean D. Young from Allies for Health and Wellbeing in Pittsburgh. Alicia Diggs from Greensboro, North Carolina, but who works in Lexington, North Carolina with Positive Wellness Alliance. Sarah Freed from Sacramento Gender Health Center. Cindy Barish from AIDSnet in Pennsylvania. Quite a few.
Great, thank you. In other words, we've got a big diversity of folks here. So this is before we start the program, one final thing. When this program is over, you're going to get an evaluation, and it will literally come up automatically. It is important that you fill out this evaluation and that you be brutally, and I know this is the HIV community, so you will be brutally honest with us about this webinar. You know, this is a new technology that we're all just learning, and we're going to make mistakes at the beginning. And so we ask for your forgiveness if we don't do it perfectly in this first time, but your evaluation is core and essential to our ability to figure out this platform. We may be using other platforms like Zoom meetings or other meetings to see if they work better. We're going to be trying this all out because unfortunately, over the next few weeks, if not months, you know, this may be how we're going to be talking to each other. And so we want to make sure that you have the best experience possible. So with that said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be starting the webinar. Once again, as I said in the beginning, we're not experts in this. That's not why we're here. And it is important for you, if you have very specific questions, to work it out with your bank. Now, what you should know is that these loans are going to be provided through banks. Most of us have personal bank accounts for our agencies, but not all banks will be able to provide these loans. They're really looking at giving the loans through what are called SBA, Small Business Association 7A loan functions. And so the first thing you're going to need to do is make sure that your bank can accept a loan request from you for this program. If you cannot find, if your bank does not do it, then what you'll need to do is go to the SBA webpage where they are listing the banks that are eligible to apply for these loans. And it's the smallbusinessassociation.gov, SBA.gov that will get you that information. But we'll be posting most of that on our website. And so if you have time or if you have any questions, you'll be able to see later on today a copy of the slide presentation as well as a copy of the PPP application on the website. So as I said, NMAC is not an expert in this. We're doing this because we want to monitor this program because we think that this is going to be probably the largest source of money to help nonprofits through these very difficult times. And we want to make sure that the HIV community gets its fair share of those resources that are going to be desperately needed. We know that people are having to lay off staff. We know that people are worried about payroll. We're all worried. I will say to you that I'm equally worried. This is a new thing that we're all trying to learn. And so what we did today was we invited our accountant. Now, NMAC has a unique situation for our accountant. we outsource all of our accounting to BDO. And so we've invited the people from BDO to be here to act as a resource for you. We've also invited Joe, who's our head of government relations, to talk to you a little bit about walking you through the presentation and what he does. But before we get started, Alvin, why don't you introduce yourself to everyone here?
Hi, good morning. My name is Alvin D'Souza, and I'm the Director of Finance and Accounting for NMAC, which is, we are providing the services through BDO. BDO is one of the largest national advisory, tax and accounting and assurance providers for a lot of clients. And we provide those services to NMAC, and at Paul's request, so I'm representing here for NMAC to provide as much information as we can. And should you have any assistance that is required in the process to get through this application, getting those loans, we have experts who can help you through get that process. So feel free to get that assistance from us, and we will be more than happy to provide that. Thank you.
Chip, can you put online in the chat section Alvin's email address so that people could email him directly if they have any questions?
Absolutely.
Great, thank you. And now the person who's going to be taking us through, Joe, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yes, good morning, everybody. My name is Joe Kwang Rakelto. I'm the Director of Policy and Government Relations for NMAC. Recently joined NMAC last September. And I retired from Capitol Hill after 23 years, serving first with Senator Ted Kennedy, where we did the reauthorization of the Ryan White Act, and then for the majority of my career, over 15 years, with former Congressman Barney Frank, and then ultimately retired with the Appropriations Committee with now Chairwoman Lucille Roybal Allard. I want to first echo what Paul said. We're not experts, but this webinar is intended to guide you to your banks with some kind of basic understanding of what we call the PPP, which is the Paycheck Protection Program. And furthering what Paul said, we are working quite diligently on the CARES Act and providing really good information to all of you. Not only the PPP, but in future webinars, how does the CARES Act affect the Ryan White program that just got $90 million? How does it affect the HOPA program that got $65 million? So we intend to keep these webinars going. I think it's a really good tool for all of you to join us as we push forward through these really difficult times, both for all of you that run nonprofits and for the national programs such as NMAC. So know that we are here, and we will remain here to provide the best knowledge that we possibly can as we move forward. Before I begin the program, let me just echo a little bit more what Paul said on phase 4. I'm part of the Chief of Staff Association with the House Chiefs of Staff, where we convene 435 members. There's a lot of talk now about what a phase 4 will look like. We are hearing that it's going to be emphasized on transportation and infrastructure, but know that behind the scenes, NMAC is working with our federal partners to figure out what we can do to further increase the aid given to HIV care providers and HIV NGOs. So those conversations are ongoing, and we are working every day to provide guidance and to make sure that we are at the table when Speaker Pelosi and Leader McCarthy are negotiating what a phase 4 and subsequent phase 5 and phase 6 may even look like. So I just want to put that out there. If there are any questions, just embargo them in the chat line, and we'll get to them in the end. Chip, if you wouldn't mind putting my email address as well, so folks can get in touch with me directly, I would appreciate that. So we'll begin with, thank you, Chip. So we'll begin with, what is the Paycheck Protection Program? Within the CARES Act, Section 3 of the CARES Act addresses small businesses and nonprofits to help ease the burden that they are now under with retaining employees. The intent here is very simple. They want to keep the open sign on the front door. They want to keep the employees employed. And with the intense, disastrous economic situation that we find ourselves in, it is challenging. So that is the crust of the PPP. It is important to know that while this is a loan program, if you abide by the guidelines, which we'll get into, those loans that you apply for will turn into a grant. So there will be, it is very important that these loans will be forgiven. The money will not have to be repaid if the guidelines are abided by. Who is eligible? All 501c3s with fewer than 500 employees are eligible. That includes full and part-time employees. What will they look for? First, is it necessary to keep your doors open? Will you use the loan to pay payroll? Will you use it to pay your lease or mortgage, or will you use it to pay utilities? And and this is very important, did you apply for a loan previous to February 15th, 2020? These, as Alvin said, will be individual decisions that will be made between you and your provider. I also want to say one thing, pause it here. Paul said that they are working with the local banks, the big national banks such as Capital One, TD, Chase, etc. The Secretary of Treasury, Mnuchin, just issued a statement last night that he is working now to expand this, and this is very important, to all SDICs, FDIC banks. So every bank in this country is FDIC. So there is an attempt now by the government to expand it to all FDIC banks. The next question that may come from here that we don't know yet the answer is, what about credit unions? We are not sure of if your credit union does business accounts, we're not sure how, if they are included. So those are the questions that we can't answer, but we know that are looming out there. How much can you borrow? It's 2.5 times the borrowers, so the nonprofits' average payroll cost. You can't borrow more than 10 million. The sums can be compensated, as the slide indicates, to salaries, vacation, sick leave, medical leave, and importantly, healthcare, including premiums. You cannot borrow if your salaries exclude, or in excess of $100,000 or more, and of course, payroll and income taxes. And will this loan be forgiven? Yes. All the loans will be forgiven. Here's the kicker, though. It has to be within. You have to maintain the loan agreement over a course of 8 consecutive weeks. If you do that, then the loan will turn into essentially a grant. It will not be. You will not have to repay it. There are caveats, though, folks. This is not a one size fits all proposal, and these slides will be made available. This is again made to lead you to your financial institutions to let you know that there's $350 billion appropriated for these programs, for the PPP. So if the questions we can't answer is what happens if you laid off somebody on February 20th? How does that affect your repayment ratio? Those are the decisions that will be made between you and your financial institutions. And that, my friends, is leading up to the questions.
Great. So that was a really quick overview. What I'd like to do now is take a moment to see if you have any questions about the overview before we go into the application that was emailed to all of you. Chip, do we have any questions from anybody?
Yes. First question, are payroll taxes included in the calculation, or does it include only health benefits?
Alvin?
Payroll taxes are included. That is
Okay.
only the county taxes, not the federal and state income taxes.
Okay. This one's coming up a couple of times, and Joe, you may have already covered it, but it'd probably be a good idea to cover it again. The criteria for having these loans convert to forgivable.
So will they be forgiven? We have a slide, and again, it depends on a specific scenario. So the broad answer is yes, they will be forgiven if you meet the standards by which the TPP, the statute says. And that statute says that during the 8-week period beginning, and this is very important, beginning from February 15th through June 30th. So that's the time frame we're looking at. If it will cover all payroll costs, rent, mortgage, and utilities will be forgiven if you retain the employment of your staff. What happens when you lay off 2 people? That will affect the payment. So will it be forgiven entirely? No, that's the answer. If you retain your staff for that 8-week period, the answer is yes. But once you get into the weeds and you say, well, we furloughed 3 employees on February 20th, then you would have some obligation to repay.
I think the other piece is you also cannot reduce their salaries. If you reduce the salaries by 25% or more, there will also be a penalty in terms of the loan forgiveness. Once again, as we said earlier in the beginning, we're not experts in this, and this is the detail that we really strongly encourage you to work out with your bank. However, we do want to be aware of it because, as we mentioned at the top of the program, we're very concerned about discriminatory lending practices by banks. And we want to make sure that all of our organizations have the same access as any other nonprofit to the money and resources that will keep them alive. And so it is particularly important for those institutions that serve people of color, that serve the LGBTQ community, particularly the transgender community, that serve women, that serve people who use drugs, that we don't let the bank's stigmatization of who we are impact their willingness to provide loans and or forgive those loans. And so part of what you want from NMAC is to monitor the implementation of this program so that if you are having issues, because it's a really, really simple application form, but if you are having any issues, that you let us know as soon as possible so that we can advocate federally on your behalf and document it so that if there's any specific language that needs to go into the next stimulus package to make sure that our folks are getting the services they need, we can add it.
And Paul, let me add on that. It's important for 2 points. First of all, this is being administered through your local bank. The reason why it's not being administered through the SBA application process is the quick turnaround. They want to infuse the cash as quickly as possible. So if you will, imagine a loan that you would normally get, a personal loan, right? The application process, you generally get that infusion of the loan proceeds relatively quickly. That's why I think it was smart for Congress to do this through the loan through your bank so you can get that infusion of cash on a relatively quick scale instead of waiting 5-6 months for a normal SBA loan. The second thing I want to mention is that NMAC has been on the forefront, and this is very important, as Paul said, on the discriminatory practices, lending practices that banks have historically been known for. This is a very big problem. We were on the forefront of the CARES Act to get minority-owned businesses included in this package. As a result of collective efforts, NMAC being part of it, we were able to get $10 million infused to minority-owned businesses. I will put on NMAC's website under the COVID-19 page, I will put a link that if you think you have been discriminated against because you're minority-owned or minority-operated, or that there is a bigotry in some kind of form, there will be a link that we will provide for you that you can file a formal complaint, a federal complaint, to call out these bad actors. We want to know about it, and as Paul said, we will do the best we can with the limited resources we have to help you overcome any discriminatory practices that you endure.
Thank you. Other questions, Chip?
Yeah, we have a lot now. Next question is, how do you include rent or lease cost?
That's a good question. Go ahead, Paul. I can answer it as well.
You're going to have to be able to document. It's based on what you currently pay. And we should note two things. It's rent or lease, and or if you have a building, it's your mortgage interest. And so you can claim either of those, but it has to be based on what you currently paid during the time period in question.
And the application is a little bit confusing because there is only a block there for salaries. So what I would recommend, if you want to include health benefits, premiums, rent, mortgage, or utilities, speak with your loan counselor at the bank, because there is not a specific dedicated box as there is with the salaries. The salaries are the big thing. They want to keep people employed, and that is the intent here. And then they looked at the legislation and they said, okay, if it becomes a matter of laying off 3 people or not paying our mortgage, we got to pay our mortgage. So that's how it evolved to include mortgage, utilities, and health benefits, because the intent was to keep the employees on the payroll. That's why that box is kind of confusing to a lot of folks. But I would recommend that if you intend to seek relief for mortgage and utilities and health, speak with your loan advisor.
And I could just also follow up to say you have to be a 501c3 and you have to have had your 501c3 determination as of February 15th, 2020. If your nonprofit status is through another agency, then you're going to have to apply through that agency for this loan, and you will not be able to apply for it by yourself. Next question.
Is the amount for your annual payroll budget or per pay period or month?
Alvin?
Yeah, it is the per pay period, and that would be from 15th of February through 30th of June, and the maximum allowed is up to 10 million.
And I think the thing that's important to understand is that it's also prorated. So if you have any staff member who makes more than $100,000, you could only get a reimbursement up to $100,000 prorated by the months. Next question.
If I am covering payroll, where are the funds for rent and utilities?
So I refer back to what I previously said. Talk to your loan advisor, because that there's not a dedicated spot that I saw anyways on the latest application that I saw. So I would let your loan advisor know that you intend to include those funds or that amount in your loan application.
And we should just acknowledge that the piece that we sent to you just this morning is not up yet. We think that it will go up tomorrow at all the banks. But when we spoke with our bank, because NMAC will be applying for this loan, when we spoke with our bank as of yesterday, Capital One had still not heard from the SBA. And so what's important to understand is that this is moving very, very quickly. Not everybody has the answers yet. It ultimately is going to be at your bank, but that your banks right now are still flying blind. I think my biggest concern about banks is this, that they're going to prioritize their customers with the biggest, who have the most money at their bank. And so we've got to make sure that everyone has access to this program, and we've got to make sure that it is open for all of us. And because I've known that private equity bankers have already started to meet with some of the wealthier nonprofits to talk about strategies. But for people like us, we don't have those same kind of advisors. And so we're going to have to stand in line with thousands and thousands of small businesses and nonprofits in order to get these loans.
Plus, not all banks do the application process. So you have to reach out to say If your bank doesn't do, then who else can help you out? So they might be able to guide you through.
Next question.
All right. How will this loan or grant affect the Ryan White Part A and Part B grants that may already support payroll?
So I have absolutely no idea. What we're going to be doing in one of our future webinars is we're going to be inviting Dr. Cheever from CDC, from HRSA, and someone from CDC to come and answer that specific questions. I don't think we have an answer for it yet. What I do know is that you cannot double dip federal money, that you can't take federal money to pay for something and then use this loan money to double dip. And so I do know that double dipping is not legal.
So let me add a little bit on that, Paul. There is this one program. It will not interfere with the Ryan White funds that your organization may or may not get. This is a dedicated line that, as Paul said, you can't, no more than you can apply twice for this loan. You can't double dip. And it's important to know that, and I really want to emphasize this, that a lot of folks have asked me, what happens after June 30th? We're talking uncharted territory here. My all indications are that the government, the Congress will continue to do what they need to do to infuse this essential aid.
Yeah, and I think it's really important that we understand, because this is so new. First of all, we've never seen a stimulus package like this, but we should also not assume that this is the last stimulus package. And in fact, we know right now that they've already started to work on the next one. And so while this only takes us through June 30th, do not assume that there won't be another one if this continues on the way it is. Next question.
All right. I think this question is probably covered, but what if our salaries are covered by grants and are reimbursable? Are those salaries still calculated in the allowable amount we can request?
It depends. Okay, so this is where you're going to have to speak with your bank, and let me kind of give you two different scenarios here. If you need the money as a bridge loan in order to pay it because you don't have the resources because it's reimbursable, then you can probably speak with your bank about using it as a bridge loan. But what you ultimately cannot do is double dip, and that's the important piece here. And that's the kind of thing that sends people to jail when you double dip. If you knowingly take money from a federal grant and use it to pay somebody, and then use this money to also pay them or use it for something else, then you're not using it for its main purpose. And this is really about salaries, benefits, and mortgages or leases.
Does it only apply for full-time employees?
No. Full and part-time.
Please discuss guidelines for salaries over $100,000.
Alvin?
So if you have salaries over 100,000, all you can claim in your application is up to 100,000. So you have to exclude anything over 100,000.
What we don't know is what that means in terms of benefits and things like that. And so we'll be waiting for more determination, because retirement benefits can be added to this. But if that benefit is for someone who's making more than $100,000, we don't know what that is, and we'll have to be speaking with the banks to look at it.
Yeah.
Next question.
Next question. What about employee benefits, insurance, 401k, et cetera?
They are all covered. So retirement, health, premiums, they are all covered under the PPP.
Right. We have already had to lay off some employees. If we bring them back, will the loan be forgiven?
No.
Yes, you do have a time period that you can bring people back. And what you'll need to do is speak with your bank about kind of how they're going to be adjudicating that one. Next question.
Next question. Sure. Clarification. Employer match of FICA and Medicare is not included?
Alvin, do you know? I don't know.
If they are part of the federal tax brackets, they are not, but I'm not very sure at this time, so we may have to do some research.
Yeah, I do know that federal taxes are not, you cannot claim federal taxes on
Yeah.
this.
Federal and state, yeah.
But county ones, you can, or city or state, or it's county or
County tax,
so,
yeah.
in other words, we don't know. Check with your bank. Let's go on.
Are other revenue streams considered for loan forgiveness, i.e. what if organization is losing some income but still has grant revenues coming in?
No, this is this is not about making you whole because your benefit didn't work or because your walk didn't happen. This is really about looking at what will happen is this: if you have employees who are not covered under grants, this will make you whole for them. This will not necessarily make you whole for all of the revenue that you lost from that benefit or from those fundraisers, but it will make those employees' salaries whole that were covered under that program.
Can the loan be applied for online?
If your bank allows for, yes, I mean, the answer is yes. There's no bank branches essentially open anymore. So if your bank, I've been recommending folks to call their bank, TD, Chase, Capital One, and to ask for the online application simply because the branches aren't open.
But don't call until tomorrow because we do not, the applications aren't supposed to be up now. And so what you'll get as an answer is what I got, which is that we don't know. And so I would strongly encourage you to wait till tomorrow because tomorrow is when it's supposed to be up and running. However, I would probably suggest to you that it's probably not even going to be then because as I said earlier, when I spoke with my bank, as of yesterday, they still have not received any word from the SBA about what they were supposed to be doing. And so they couldn't give me any guidance about their application process.
Okay.
Next
question is, only health insurance? We provide vision, dental, life, etc.
Speak with your bank, but I think that they're probably going to be covered.
Yes, benefits are covered.
Someone has here, 75% of the loan must be used to cover payroll costs.
70%, no.
I've not heard that one. I'm sorry. Alvin?
What was the question?
They just come said 75% of the loan must be used to cover payroll costs.
I don't know yet. I have to do some research.
We'll post that on our webpage. Next question.
The instructions say use average payroll for 2019. Should it be the amounts for February 15th to June 30th, 2020?
That's correct.
I think the question that you're going to have to ask with your bank is, are you going to look at the average payroll in December of 2019? Or are you going to be, or do you have to go back to February of 2019 in order to look at a comparable period? And once again, that's going to be a bank decision that you're going to have to work on with them. Next question.
Will recording this presentation be made available? I can answer that. Yes, it will. It will be on the COVID-19 page of our website probably tomorrow. No later than tomorrow. We laid three people off in March and reduced hours for some others, but at their rate of pay. Does this take us out of the running for forgiveness?
If you laid them off permanently, then you're going to have to speak with your bank. If you laid them off and you can bring them back on, then you have an opportunity to be a part of the program. Now, remember, this is about the forgiveness. You can still apply for the loan, and the loan is a very, very low interest rate loan that you can apply for. And that the loan and the forgiveness are two very different things.
Okay. On the application, it asks for owners greater than 20%. For nonprofits, would this be the board of directors?
Yeah, for nonprofits, this is not an applicable question. This is for small businesses because nonprofits do not have owners per se.
What about 1099 employees?
It's a good
Those are-
question.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Alvin.
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
No, it's a good question. 1099, so as the statute says, 1099 employees are eligible to apply. How that works with your specific NGO is for you and your bank to decide. But on the general level, yes, they are eligible to apply as independent contractors.
But the question I think that they're asking is not that. The question is can they apply for the loan and be forgiven as part of their salary? And I don't know the answer to that one. And I think that what you're going to have to do, because there are these two separate programs, and people can apply as individuals as well as companies. And we're just talking right now about the PPP program. We're not talking about the other components of the CARES initiative. And what we will be, and unfortunately in our world, CARES often means the Ryan White Care Act, and so that it's a little double speak here. We're talking about the stimulus package that's being put out here, and we will be hopefully soon walking through the entire package. But we wanted to talk about the PPP because we understood that that's where you all are going to get money, and you're going to hopefully get it forgiven, and that's going to be the lifeline to get you through this difficult period. Next question.
What about new employees after February 15th?
No, because it has to be your average of your previous month. So they would not necessarily, like, you cannot go and hire 5 new people and then claim them in this, I don't believe, because it has to be the average of your salaries over a previous period.
And plus, it also says that it is to retain the employees that you already have. So it is not to bring in new employees. It is to protect the current employees on your payroll, and that's what it should be. So I don't think you can hire and say, yeah, I would be doing that. No.
They had to have been employed by, I believe, February 15th. Another question.
This is a little bit longer, but you have to have the cash to pay those salaries before you get reimbursed. So double dipping isn't the issue. It's having enough cash to pay them up front when all donations dry up, which supports the cash flow requirement.
Well, so that's where the loan component of this comes in. You can apply for a loan that you can repay. It's just about the forgiveness section that we were talking about. In other words, if you don't have the cash right now, you can absolutely apply for the low interest loans that this program will be doing. What you can't do is ask for forgiveness of that loan if you already are getting cash reimbursements from the Ryan White Care Act or from your CDC or from other proposals.
And it's important to know that they're not going to ask a nonprofit about reserves or finances. So that's another question that we've been fielding a lot, that, we have a little reserve, we don't want to dip into it. Are they going to require us to use the reserves before they administer the funds? And the answer is no.
Okay. Next.
Yeah.
Oh,
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Paul. Go ahead.
No, please. Go next.
The next question is, can we reallocate Ryan White grant funds from salary to program costs?
Once again, I think we'll need to bring Dr. Cheever in to do a webinar. I will send her an invite and invite her to be a part of a webinar either next week or the week after. And we will try to get all of these answers, because I don't think they know at this particular moment.
Can the monies be used for any operational expenses?
They can be used for rent and benefits.
And utilities.
Utilities. I'm sorry, utilities. And utilities are electricity, gas, water, transportation, telephone, or internet.
This one's a bit of a long one too. The calculation is the maximum amount you can borrow. But if you want loan forgiveness, reduce the loan amount to the payroll portions, rent, mortgage interest, et cetera, that are not covered by rent. I think it's more of a comment than a question. Another for employees at 100 greater than 100,000 can only charge 8,333.33 a month for their salary.
Yeah.
Is that accurate? Okay.
Yeah.
Employer FICA retirement match insurance premiums are covered.
Yep.
Are external contractors included, such as grant writers and IT support?
No.
They are not.
Is Bank of America part of this?
We don't.
Most major banks are going to be a part of it, and I would be really surprised if Bank of America wasn't. What the initial guide was that they do an SBA loans, but what Joe just said earlier was that it's basically going to be anyone who does any bank right now that can do it. Is that right, Joe?
Yeah, there's working to get all FDIC insured banks enrolled in this program. So it's not up and running yet, but the Secretary of Treasury issued a statement last night or yesterday saying that they are working, Treasury is working to make sure that all FDIC insured banks can process these applications.
The challenge is going to be that if your bank doesn't have this existing infrastructure or systems up and running, it may take them some time to get it up and running. And so you're not required to go to your existing bank. If you can create a new relationship with the new bank, it's just that will take a little bit more time and may be a little bit more difficult, particularly with everything closed right now.
And that's a really good point, Paul. This loan is, financial institutions, if they are involved, if they are a part of the SBA program, they have to accept these applications. So you made a really good point there that even if your bank isn't and Capital One is, you can apply through Capital One.
Next question.
Okay. To clarify, any employee whose salary is covered under a federal grant cannot be paid with these funds?
Cannot be double dipped for forgiveness. In other words, and let me say this. So if you do not have the cash and it's a reimbursable grant, you can apply for a loan to be a bridge loan to pay for the salary, but that you can't get it forgiven because you're going to get reimbursed through your federal contract. However, if you are not going to be reimbursed through another mechanism, then that's the salaries that will be forgiven.
Certification on the application says it is anticipated that not more than 25% of the forgiven amount may be for non-payroll costs.
Yeah, I don't. Then that's probably, if it's on there, then we'll accept it. Good.
Next question. I terminated someone earlier this week because of performance. Can that remain separate from the layoffs?
No.
Can the loan application be completed for payroll that 340B income covers so that the funding can be utilized for other Ryan White services?
Once again, I think we'll need to bring Dr. Cheever in to be able to talk about that. My sense is that you have enough flexibility with your 340B that you should be able to do that, but I just don't know.
What is the interest rate?
It's a little bit above, is it 4.48? Do you remember, Alvin, do you remember what it was?
No, I don't.
I think it's 4.48, but we'll have, but once again, verify that with your bank.
Does the forgiveness penalty apply if the staff person left on their own, got another job?
Yeah, don't know. You'll have to speak with your bank.
How will this affect our 340B money?
Well, I think your 340B money is going to really be dependent on people, refilling their prescriptions, and your 340B money is not attached necessarily to specific salaries, the income from that, and so I think you'll have the same flexibility with your 340B money that you've always had.
Payroll average will be based on the 2019 quarters or first quarter of 2020?
Alvin, do you know? I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, it says the average salary is between February 15, 2019 through January 30th, but I think the best approach would be to talk to your bank.
Okay, and that was the last question we've received so far. Does anybody else? Oh, I spoke too soon. Here's another one. If someone we've already laid off has taken another job, can we hire someone else at the same rate and still have forgiveness?
No.
No.
They have to have been employed and have lost their job because of the because of the coronavirus, and that's kind of what this is about, trying to make you whole for that. But once again, I would suggest that you speak with your bank, and I think your bank will be able to give you more information. What we're about to end. We have 10 more minutes, and so there are just a couple things that I want to say to you. Obviously, there were a lot of questions we couldn't answer, and we are going to be trying to figure out most of these answers and post them on our webpage. We invite you to join us, however, next week, because we will be answering more questions. We have a few more minutes left, and so what I'd like to have you do, if you could, in the question section, is talk about what are the topics that are most pressing to you right now that you want to make sure that we can cover. I've clearly heard we need to speak to Ryan White and CDC and have them come and talk about the differential in terms of reimbursement. Are there any other questions that you feel like you really need answers to beyond the PPP that you'd like us to look at for next week's webinar?
And if not, I encourage everybody to email us, because we know that there's a lot on your plate right now. There's things are moving very quickly, and so we really want to be hands-on, as Paul said, with webinars, and be a source, maybe not for how to, but at least get the information out there to the best of our ability. So as we start looking at the concerns, obviously Ryan White is a big one. We will use that as our lead to frame up another webinar on a specific issue that is impacting our work. So you know, and if you can't think of anything now, or something comes to you later, email us, because we will respond promptly.
And I guess the final. Oh, go ahead.
We had a couple more questions come in that I just want to see if I want to squeeze in here. And this one, I don't think this actually sort of applies, but someone's asking about loans for transition to mobile services for telehealth or new equipment. This would not apply in that. I imagine this person's trying to get us that into the next package that we're working on.
Yep, I think that's a really good one. I think that's a very, very good one. Next question.
If an employee moved to another department internally, does that count against the Oregon application?
Talk to your bank.
And that was it.
So let me just end by saying something. Thank you all for what you're doing every day. This is a very, very scary time, but it is critical and essential that we keep services available for people living with HIV, that their needs have not gone away because of the virus, and that the HIV infrastructure has to survive this time period. And so every day with all of your work, we really appreciate it. Look for the message for next week's topics, and please fill out the evaluation form. We're just starting this process, and we really want to learn how to make it better. So thank you all for being on the call, and please be safe.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
That's it.